States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First on our agenda this evening, we have a presentation for our capital project update, and Mr. Wheelock will introduce our guest.
Yes, just a little preamble to what we're going to discuss here. We did our bid openings for phase 2 of the capital project, which is really the meat and potatoes minus the roofs, which were done last summer, phase 1. So we had a bid for the general contracting services, electrical, plumbing, and mechanical, which is a lot of the HVAC stuff. Tonight, we hope to accept the bids from the general contractor, electrical, and the plumbing bids, but we do have, we're seeking to go out to rebid for the mechanical because they came in significantly higher than what we budgeted for, and we hope with a rebid that we will go out and attract more than one bidder that we had this time. But I will let these gentlemen who are here tonight. I do have from our construction managers from the schoolhouse construction, Eric Robert and Evan Rivers, and then our architects from Ashley McGraw, Nick Signorelli. Gentlemen,
great.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us this evening. I believe that Ron had shared a memo that we had crafted earlier in the week. It's got the Schoolhouse logo on the top here. So I'm Eric Robert with Schoolhouse, and just want to speak initially here to some of the conditions that we came across with the public bid on the project. And then Nick is going to focus on the recommendations to award that we're presenting this evening. So Ron had hit that we had one bid package in particular that was somewhat of the problem child, for lack of better terms, and that was the mechanical package. I will say overall we are in a time where we're continuing, unfortunately, to have escalation, labor shortages in our market, contractors that are very busy. So those are partial ingredients in our recipe. I think earlier today the feds were talking about another rate increase to try to get a grip on this, but it's something that we're dealing with. So that's a component here as well. But to navigate through this memo that we put together and kind of the scope outline here, so we've identified the fact that we had the mechanical package with one bidder. We did have a couple of other packages with one bidder, but this one in particular stood out with higher pricing. Some of the reasons for that, we debriefed all of the contractors that bid, all the apparent low bidders, tried to learn as much as we could, and a couple of the things we learned from the mechanical bidder are one, in relation to the HVAC controls, and tied with that, the equipment, there was a lack of competition that they saw. So there's a vendor that the district's been working with for quite some time that's been here. Johnson Controls, they're a good company. When the mechanical contractor was submitting their bid, they only received one bid for that controls work, okay? They also, for the equipment portion of it, the specifications were an open spec, which is compliant with SED, where they identify, an acceptable manufacturer or state and or equal. And the supply chain that this mechanical contractor was working with read that a little bit differently, I would say. They read it that they were somewhat locked into only one manufacturer for your equipment. So to help overcome that, I'm going to skip that just for 1 minute. Bidder interest is also identified here. Just having the one bidder being an issue, and we've been working with some outreach to overcome that component. And then lastly, I'll mention number 4 on the second page mentions that there was some added scope during the SED review process. So from the time we had estimated to hitting the street, there was a little bit of scope that was added there. So our focus to overcome this issue, the primary avenue to overcome this is rebidding the mechanical package itself, okay? We've been able to identify, if we're able to rebid and we receive your support tonight, that we will have multiple bidders responding. The contractor that initially responded, H.J. Brandelys, is willing to rebid. We've been beating the streets, if you will, for lack of better terms, in touch with a number of contractors, and that started with the initial bid, but we've been able to attract a mechanical contractor from the Albany area, a firm that we've worked with that's been doing a little bit of business over here in Utica. The name of that company is Family Dan's. We also have one other firm that we've been in touch with that is showing interest. They haven't presented a full commitment yet, and that's the Danforth Company. In regards to the HVAC controls and getting more competition there, and so everybody understands, again, these controls are like a subcontractor to this mechanical party. We've been able to identify a firm by the name of Upstate Controls that we've worked with on other school projects, and they can work with your systems in a compliant manner. So right now, the school's on a Johnson-based system. Johnson is interested in rebidding as a subcontractor, but we also know that Upstate is interested, and they would be presenting pricing to these different parties. Additionally, with the equipment portion, Nick and his team have taken things a step further with the specifications, and they have listed and identified multiple equipment vendors that could price your project. So we feel that these are the right steps to overcome the challenges that we've had, in particular with the mechanical scope. The next document, which is the last page of this memo, provides somewhat of a spreadsheet breakdown of how we're kind of evaluating the scope and presenting the district with some options here. There are some slight reductions in some cases, but to briefly go through this, and I won't hit every line item, but feel free to stop me or to ask questions. For the site items, you'll notice that we have columns here, whether the scope is to stay as base scope, whether it's to be an alternate option where it's an individually priced option that we can select if we can afford, or if we're looking at the scope as being deferred to the next capital project or capital outlay project, for instance. So with the site work right now, we're suggesting holding off on the steeplechase and the multi-sport scoreboard, and also deferring the middle school ADA ramp and walkway. The rest of the scope we're looking to award at this time. If the mechanical bids come back within reason, then we can revisit and see about adding in the steeplechase and the scoreboard. Moving down to the high school here, you can see that the home and careers room, the flooring there has been identified as an alternate, as well as some other flooring upgrades that are listed in number 7. And also number 10 here. Number 10 pertains to the plumbing contract that was received. And in working with the district and our low bidders, we were able to identify that we're replacing hot water heaters in all 3 school buildings in the base scope. But the hot water heaters here in the high school aren't as pressing as the other areas. And if we need to release some funds from that work, that's an item that's worth a little over $300,000 that we can work with. Being deferred is outlined in number 3, and that is air handling units that actually serve this space in here, as well as the adjacent office area on the other side of the hallway here. In speaking with the facilities director, Steve Parker, Steve mentioned these units are older units, but they have not been problematic, and there's believed to be some life left in the units here, so that made sense for a deferment in that case. At the middle school, you can see number 2, we're looking at some flooring and some stair treads as a possible option if need be. Currently it is in the general contractor's scope. And then going to the back page, you can see some other alternate options that reside with the general contractor. So not only, to step back a moment, not only are we looking at rebidding the mechanical work, but we're also looking at some individual components that reside with the other contractors and trying to present the district with the most amount of options with what we can afford. Moving down to the elementary school, you'll see the library space, number 2. The library space at the elementary school, that's another rooftop HVAC unit. And when again, discussing this with Steve, he thought this particular unit at the elementary school was in more need of replacement than the units here. So that's why that's not marked currently as being deferred, but being a pricing option when we receive the rebids back. And then we see number 5, there's a number of unit ventilators selected or that are designated for the elementary school. We've elected to identify some of those as pricing alternates with that mechanical package back. And then last but not least, you can see the bus garage where we have also identified HVAC, and at the bus garage it's been identified there currently as a deferment to the next project. So that's kind of our plan, rebidding this mechanical where we feel there were higher levels of markup and that we didn't have competitive pricing, and then also working with some components with the other trade contractors. So
that was a lot of information.
it was.
So let's pause there for a second. So does everyone sort of understand what Eric has gone through, and do you have any questions about that first?
A quick question.
Sure.
Is Mr. Jones still there? Yeah. Hey, and Mr. Wheelock, I know that there was a conversation about steeplechase and the scoreboard. Can we draw people here for events with steeplechase? Like, would we be a destination people won't utilize to use our turf in our area for other events, or is that not something that would be like lucrative or worth our while?
Personally, I don't think so.
Okay.
You know, we are a destination anyway. We've been a destination without the steeplechase.
Okay.
Now, I know there might be some thoughts that people in the track will say that they will not allow us, maybe in the future years, if other schools have the steeplechase, they will get first preference in doing those, and that could be some truth to that. But it's also, you're talking a few schools that will have it, but to do it the night before, which we've been doing for years. So you might fall a little bit behind by other schools that have it, but I still believe we'd be a destination towards those other avenues.
All right, thank you.
And then my guess, or my question would be with the scoreboard, when you say, is that taking the elite scoreboard out of it and having a different level scoreboard for the cheaper cost, or no scoreboard at all with the one that's been up?
That's a good question, and I can share some of the conversations we've had, because there are a variety of scoreboards. And what we've discussed, is again going through this exercise where we're rebidding, we're evaluating other options, and then when it comes to the scoreboard, if funds are not an issue and that's a priority, I think the district would lean towards one of the more elite scoreboards, if you will. If funding becomes an issue and there's not as much to apply towards a scoreboard, maybe the district considers more of a base model type of option. I don't want to speak, for Ron or for Charlie, but that's kind of been the general discussion right now.
It's kind of prioritizing based or triaging too. Whatever this project here has some work left over from the previous project. And a lot of that is actually flooring in the elementary school. But we could, some we may be able to defer to a later project, but a lot of that flooring does need to be replaced. We can't kick it to the next project. So some of this might be new scope stuff to this project that was a carryover. All important work, all we would love to have done, but some of it we can push or defer. And then, like Eric was saying, if some of these alternate options get a separate bid, and right now we have money budgeted and we have bidders saying it's going to be this, but there could be situations where even once the project gets going, that some of their costs aren't realized at the level which they thought they were. And if there's money to play with, then we can then go back to that list and prioritize what we feel we need to do. And if it's a scoreboard going from good, great to outstanding, then we have to choose between good, great, and outstanding.
One of the nice things I'll add for the scoreboard is that's a component that's available on state contract. So it provides more flexibility for the district to navigate through their financials and where things are overall, and then to be able to work with a state contract vendor with their options and pull the trigger from there.
Eric, I have a couple comments.
Yes,
I want you to put yourself in the eyes of the public
sure.
who are going to attend events here. Just using that track as an example. I visited probably the last 6 schools that built a new track or resurfaced the track. Included in their track is a steeplechase.
Yep.
They did it the right way. If you look at those facilities, Mr. Jones, they have an updated, if not very impressive scoreboards. So now you come to visit Sauquoit Valley. If these don't go through, you see an antiquated scoreboard, you see a resurfaced track. We tell our kids to get on a bus the day before to go run an event somewhere else. That's what we're going to answer to. Those are questions, those are legitimate questions that the public's going to have. And I want to be prepared for that.
Okay, okay. You know, I realize this is not the ideal situation. I can share that we work with approximately 70 different school districts in upstate New York. I'm the owner of our firm, and this is a very common conversation on many fronts. Even for schools who have reached their initial bid, we're just in a time that's very difficult. And if, you know, some of these items that you bring up are a priority to the school, I think we're presenting enough options where the district can select their high priority items at this time. So we did talk a little bit to the landscape architect and civil engineer that's involved in the project. One of the comments that he had shared in relation to the steeplechase is that right now we're doing a little bit more of you know, the surface repair work on the track, if you will, and the steeplechase could easily be added in as a component in a future project when that's called to be reconstructed. Just, you know, mentioning that logistically it could be done later, but I realize this is not my decision. This is a district decision with the funds that you can afford and the priorities that you have.
I have a question. Is there a cost difference between doing it now and at a later time?
There would be, typically there would just be your regular type of escalation type of expenses with that. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So it's not easier to put it now with the project that's happening now versus later?
It's, you know, I think it's just as easy doing it now as doing it later. You know, when we were kind of evaluating this, we tried to lean on different members of the team that have different expertise. And just, you know, when we're talking in the, you know, the site design area, the point that I had mentioned was brought up.
Just to put some clarity around that too, is that we're not doing anything in this project that would be undone if you put the steeplechase in later.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
I have a second question.
Sure.
Just to comment.
Yep.
I'm just going to refer to, I know no one at HD Brainleys.
Yes.
I have no awareness of the company.
Yep.
But I can't say they're one of the most well-respected mechanical contractors in central New York. They've done multi-projects. Their name is on plaques in many municipalities we go with. So I just question, I know we're looking for competition, but I don't think we're dealing with someone that doesn't have experience in doing a project similar to ours.
I agree, yes. And not all of this is on HJ Brandley's, and I don't mean to call them out, if you will. In our opinion, the chain leading up and what they're including in their bid has been affected. You know, I mentioned the equipment. So under the prior spec, they were under an impression that they could only use one specific, you know, maker of equipment. And when those vendors start to, they catch on to this during a bid process, and all of a sudden they start to realize that they may be the only ones quoting a project. So we had the equipment component that was in the bid. We also had the controls component, you know, on top of that. So we're feeling that, you know, with the steps I mentioned, increasing the awareness on the specs with other manufacturers, and then also bringing in another controls company, we feel that those are ingredients that are going to help the district.
And HJ Brandley's has been helpful in helping us identify items while we're going through this post-bid interview process as well. So they have been helpful in trying to identify escalated costs moving forward.
Any other questions? Just a quick question. We're looking, if except with the exception of the mechanical. But given what Mr. Nicotera has already stated regarding the steeplechase and I guess flexibility, I mean, how much flexibility, if we accept the stuff as is kind of proposed here and how much flexibility do we have if the board deliberates on this, either beyond tonight, says, well, wait a minute, can we reprioritize this and maybe this becomes an alternate, and this alternate becomes part of the base bid? Where's our flexibility? I just want them to be clear, do we have flexibility
Sure.
or don't have it?
We still do have some flexibility after the award.
Okay.
So, if the district moves forward with the awards that Nick will speak to in a moment, and let's say, Ron, we wanted to pull out the hot water heaters that we talked about in the high school here. The values, I mentioned a little over $300,000. That's something that we could pull out after, and we could do a deduct change order to the plumbing contractor to free up money for the steeplechase or the scoreboard or other priorities that you may have.
We're saying we're going to accept bids up to this price, but we know we can't go over that.
Correct.
But we can play with those figures within if there's discussion. This is the priority of the district, the board, whatever. And that's we want to do a shift that may be different than what's laying here. We have that ability to do so.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'll talk about, so one of the ideas tonight is to, if you're acceptable to it, is to award the contracts that have already been in place and we've vetted and made sure that they've, made sure that their work is covered in our specs. And so those contracts would be general contractor, electric contractor, and plumbing contractor. So the idea is to, if you're acceptable to that, award those three, plus the state contract award for, obviously for the turf and the tennis courts and the track recoding. The intent is to try to get them moving so they could start ordering materials so that when summer hits, we actually could hit the ground running. One of the things that will happen as well is once we get the HVAC contractor rebid, get their number, some of that scope potentially is reduced. We would have deduct change orders to each one of the contracts that you award tonight, because obviously there's electric that is required for some unit vents that we won't do, or the mechanical unit up here. So we will write a deduct change order, so their numbers will actually be lower. So, any questions about those contracts that I just mentioned?
Those are located in the back of your board pack. Those are add-ons.
I mean, we would like to get them awarded as soon as possible, just so that we can get the letter of intent letters out to them, get the contracts in process. They need to get their paperwork in order, so it takes a little bit to just kind of get started, actually.
Basically, what you would be voting on is those were the low bidders. That's what the base bids were, relatively in the range of where our budgets were. We vetted all of that stuff, and said they're good. So, as Nick said, that's just to get the ball rolling, especially with the turf. We hope to get the work on the stadium in May. But if there's questions, if we, whatever the board is comfortable with, but this is typically we'd be coming with all of these to be voted on tonight, but the rebid with mechanical will be forthcoming.
And just to also, if you are acceptable to rebidding the HVAC contractor, the drawings are ready and they're going to go out to the bidders tomorrow. So we're going to look at 2 to 3 week bid schedule.
Last week of this month, bids would be coming back in.
Right.
concerns with the rebid? Okay. And if there's any questions while we have these gentlemen here tonight, we would be adding this on to our consent motion. So if you have any questions, ask them. So otherwise, we'll vote that with our normal voting procedure. Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much,
Thank you
everyone.
very much.
Have a good evening.
Safe travels.
Take care. Good night, Charlie. Thank you. Take care, guys.
Next, then we'll move on to our next presentation is Mr. Jones, our athletic director.
Just more informative what's been happening, particularly with 3 programs that we're looking to maintain, restart, or add on. First one, golf. About 2.5, 3 weeks ago, Notre Dame, we've had 2 golfers that have golfed in combination with Notre Dame the last 2 years. And 2.5, 3 weeks ago, they called me and said that they were not going to continue with the program. They had Whitesboro kids, they had Oriskany kids, and they had 2 of our athletes. So over the last 2.5 weeks, I put calls in, with Mount Markham. They have a boys team, not a girls team. Reached out to New Hartford, Whitesboro, and Holland Patton. And right now, we are in kind of the works, New Hartford, in working out something. It wouldn't be a combination, perhaps an independent. Our 2 golfers could follow their schedule, work with their coach if the coach is in agreement with that. Now I say those 2 golfers, we do have a third that's interested, that's in middle school. Working out some logistics too with New Hartford and us, and adding extra golfers. They appear that these 2 golfers have already established themselves. Is this something that we look for next year if we can show more numbers to add it to Sauquoit? But the timing with Notre Dame dropping and getting a course and a coach and different things, and we've already had 2 established golfers, we don't want them to lose out. They've been part of Tri-Valley and sectional play. So I am working with Hartford. I'll have more information on what direction perhaps we would go. I'd be looking to you. You might have to do it sooner than later. Approve a independent. We have New Hartford wrestling. We've done that. That's a combination, but this would be more independently. We've done swimming out with Rome. So I may, with Mr. Wheelock, come back to you to kind of, because it starts next week. Okay, March 13th, golf, probably not, but the opportunity officially to start, but it'll probably get pushed down, so we're not in an emergency with that. So I just wanted to give you a heads up with that. I'm still working with New Hartford. And again, like I said, I've gone to Whitesboro, I've gone to Holland Patton, and just the first step, New Hartford being close by, is logistics the best option if it can work out with it. Any questions on golf? Okay. Next one, softball. A few years ago, we had girls JV softball. And there's been some questions on numbers and different things, if we could restart the program to have that. And right now we're looking at the numbers of there's 15 to 16, 9 through 12. That was at our meeting last night, 15 to 16. There's currently 15 7th and 8th graders signed up. Now the tricky part is because modified starts April 3rd, any freshmen that they're allowed to play the modified. Any freshmen that, I'm sorry, let me step back. With that 15 to 16, and the varsity carried 12 to 14 girls, that leaves 2 to 4 freshmen, 10th graders up on JV. We would have to look to pull from the modified 5 or 6 athletes, maybe to get to 10, maybe to get to 9 to 10 to 11. Those numbers aren't really reaping with confidence. So tomorrow and Thursday, we're going to re-canvas here a little bit and reach out to 9th and 10th graders to see if there's interest. Specifically, there's going to be a couple announcements tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday, to see if we can,
kids that have played, that have chosen not to, didn't sign up, but we're going by the sign-ups right now. And ideally, bringing up, it brings challenges to bring up 7th or 8th graders to a JV program. One, they got to pass an APP test, an advanced placement test. 2, which ones come up, and which ones stay down. Then all of a sudden, well, I'm not with my friends, so I'm not going to play, so they lose numbers. And if you bring up 4 or 5 7th or 8th graders, and then all of a sudden the JV, they start with 9 or 10, and the injury goes to 8. You cannot start a game with 8. The ones that are brought up, if we can't play a JV season, they can't go back to modified. So there's so many more aspects to, if you don't have the healthy numbers of 12 to 14 on a team, injuries are going to happen in athletics. Perhaps, and with the freshmen moving down, the other aspect of this that I'm looking into, the 7th graders that are playing Little League, if they come out, will that up the numbers and they play both? Are they just going to stick with something? I'm not getting answers from anybody. I've had, Coach Orsino he's feeling out more the 9 through the 12. I've had Frank Carreri in the middle school canvas and get those sign-ups to 15 in the middle school with just 7th and 8th graders. So the next 2 days will kind of determine, if I'll reach back to you to say we're going to have to hire a JV coach. I'm going to have to put a schedule together. Both possible in particular schedule. I can get that. They're already out there for the modifieds and whatever, but I can find some games for the JV. So any questions on the softball, kind of what I've been going through in the next 2 days will be coming. I'll inform Mr. Wheelock what might be the best for the program, but open for suggestions to how to alleviate or whatever.
So when they do the tryouts, how many players are they looking for to make one team?
Like I said, the varsity, he says he could pull with 12 to 14, just depending on positions and different things like that. If he went with 12, right now based on our sign-ups, that would leave 4 out of the 9 through 10 with JV. But there's 6 freshmen and 2 or 3 sophomores. There's going to be, some of those freshmen are going to play because of the number. There's only 1 senior on the team. So some freshmen and sophomores and juniors, varsity up anyway, but there's some freshmen or sophomores that will have a chance to play varsity. So that takes the numbers from the JV if they're up on varsity. So that's why it would only leave possibly 4 players, 4 to 6, 9 through 12. And 11th and 12th graders aren't generally playing JV.
Do we normally, Doug, how's it been over the past couple of years? Do we normally have a JV team?
We haven't had JV since pre-COVID, or just right before COVID. And the numbers then were a balancing act. We were between 8 to 11. Sometimes we steal 1 down from varsity, and you have to
Those
keep track.
numbers were mostly sustained from 9 through 12.
Correct.
What he's presenting here is quite ideally and philosophically, you shouldn't be doing 5 or 6 kids.
I mean, normally you have maybe
If they
2
were
or
that
3
good, we
quality
should be bringing
athletes to
them
move up
anyways,
JV.
and probably good enough to play varsity. But I won't say jumping all the way to varsity, but they've already been in the discussion, not saying, well, we need kids, and now that's not the purpose. I think if our numbers were closer to 20.
I mean, there's
if
3
we had 6 to
there's
8,
3 sophomores, and ideally to have a JV program, it's filled up with 9th and 10th graders, and maybe you take your best 1 or 2 8th graders that are quality, strong athletes. But there's 3 10th graders signed up.
If we
that's
closer to 6 to 8.
Right. And if I'm not mistaken, maybe some of you that have the softball experience, that even our youth program went from 2 teams to 1 team for a year or 2 in the softball at the Little League level, where we used to either maintain 2 and 3 teams. So, I mean, we kind of saw this coming. I mean, it's no secret to that. And, track numbers are up. At a small school, you see the balance get, the fall, it happens all the time with cross-country, field hockey, soccer, girls tennis. Girls tennis has gone through, I only got 6 stages. Now it's like we got 13, 14. So at a small school, it is a very challenging balancing act. And I would say small school, the bigger schools right now with athletics are challenging their numbers. The bigger schools, are struggling to have JV programs and varsity programs and different. It's a balance. It's come back this year. I'm seeing some positive, maybe this year, the following year, whatever, but definitely, and this started before COVID. This, don't let it, COVID affected it, but this was starting before COVID. You know, field hockey numbers were extremely, now all of a sudden they could argue, we'd like a JV team. They're sitting at 18 or 20 in building and different things, but there's just a shift of balance of power that happens. And I understand, you know, I'm a softball person, I'm a soccer person, everybody's going to be, you know, we have to look at it holistically. You know, we really do. And if, in a perfect world, we fill every program and have everything going. Much like a budget. You know, perfect world, you're not doing what you're doing. And this isn't, you know, surgery. Yes, it's dealing with kids and parents' emotions, and that's very difficult too. So, you know.
I think there's a commitment from the district. That,
Yeah, you know, it's there, the budget is there to do the JV softball, but we have to be, you have to balance that with the...
I think you have to keep us informed of
I will.
the numbers, how they change, how they shake out.
And we will reach out tomorrow one more time.
That's a real dilemma, what you mentioned about bringing kids up, and then starting that, and then stopping the JV program, and there's no place for kids to go back to.
Right, and stop it. Then they're not playing it all.
Right.
And listen, I've seen it all. I've seen where you bring kids up, and the two that didn't get bring up, well, I'm not playing. Now you don't have a modified team because the feelings were hurt with a 12. You know, one thing to get cut and be over it in 3 days and go to track, but all of a sudden my friends went up, I didn't, I'm quit. Or I'm up and I'm brought down, I'm not happy, and so I'm not going to play modified. And some want to, some do, some don't. It's individual how people want to deal with it and handle it and like the sport and want to play and different things like that. But there's just a lot to it. More questions about softball? Yeah.
Is it challenging, like, to find other schools that have JV teams too, as well?
It can be. They've really dropped off, but you know, I mean, they may play some Tri-Valley schools. But there is. I asked in the league last week. There's 6 girls JV teams, and right now they're planning on it. Could go to 4, could go to 7 or 8.
What are some of those schools that have the JV?
Little Falls, Cooperstown.
So
I don't think
they're
sure,
C
but-
schools then.
What?
They're C schools. They're not Bs or As.
We Tri-Valley. There's some Bs definitely. We can look to play some Bs if that was the case. If we can't find enough Cs, I don't think there's any Ds that have it. Maybe Hamilton. Maybe they kind of got a pretty good solid softball program down there. But I could fill it 12, 14 through what I talked about in the league if we are able to get the team together. One more thing, quickly. Unified sports, particularly basketball, it takes place in the springtime. We were board approved for that the year we went into COVID, so we didn't do it. And I don't know if this is going to support the numbers, you know, depending on within our district, the interest from the unified kids. I'm going to reach out to you. What it would entail is the Special Olympics. It's inclusive. It's more about treating it as close to a New York State sport standard, New York State sports certified coach, kind of a counselor to go along to help. Which one did I do? Hold on. A coordinator, and then a coach. The Special Olympics will pay or give the district $2,000 in its first year, $1,000 in its second year. Then it's up to the district, you know, to fund it as it goes. $2,000 won't 100% fund it, but it's a start between paying a coach, a coordinator, referees. You know, if you ask the cost, it would probably be looking at $1,500 beyond the $2,000 in its first year. Then keep in mind they give you $1,000 the next year. You know, and I if I kind of get board approved here with you tonight to go forward with it, then I will check with, you know, the special programs here, how many kids would be interested. And what it is with the unified, it combines with the interactive inclusive of student athletes here with the classroom, and then the inclusive 3 athletes are on the court with 2 regular athletes to form 5, and you play. And right now, here's the other challenge. Okay, Whitesboro has it, New Hartford has it, VVS has it. You're going to see a pattern here, and we're trying to be inclusive. We're a small school. Herkimer is in the same boat. They're about the same size school we are, and they're doing the same this year, perhaps getting it. They don't know themselves right now. Trying to think who else. There's only about 6 schools. Whitesboro, VVS, New Hartford. I'll give you more information.
How many games do they play? What would their schedule be?
10, 8 to 10.
5 home, 5 away.
Roughly.
2 officials on each game.
2 officials.
Varsity
Practice a couple times a week.
Varsity pay rate?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll call that $200
A game.
a game.
$1,000.
1,000 in officials, transportation costs, coaching costs.
Probably more than that, 1,500. With the 2,000, you know, you talk about coach. It's a shorter season, so coaching we would have to talk about what we're
I'm going to
thinking.
estimate a $7,000 to $8,000 cost, all inclusive.
I think that would be high.
Maybe slightly high. 2,000 could come from Special
Right.
Olympics, but
Right.
could be less.
5,000.
Just conservatively high number.
Uniforms, although we would be good to start to see. I wouldn't go out and purchase uniforms because I don't know if it's going to be successful, but we have uniforms that we can use.
I think what you're looking for is at least, is there support that if the numbers are there?
Because I would have to get a thing into Special Olympics to get them to say, okay, grid, go for it, get into a schedule, find a coach, a coordinator. And it's more than just playing the sport. They do a lot of coordination. They have meetings, and the kids take control with the coordinator. So it's kind of like a leadership thing. I guess I should have said that. So, I mean, yes, it's sports involved, but it's a leadership to help our kids in our school interact and teach and be a part of and help to be inclusive with different aspects of that. And then I guess if I get the approval to look forward to that, then I say, hey, I have the numbers, I have that, then I'm coming back to you. Are you ready to go, yes or no?
Yeah. So if the board is okay with him to continue to plow forward to see if there is interest, then if there is, then I think come back here on the 21st and formally approve the program if that's the direction we want to go. But I don't want to push it forward if we don't feel that's doable.
Well, I think just like the JV softball, right? Just see
Numbers,
what's-
right.
Yeah, see what's out there, right? Same situation.
But I guess, because what he's saying is, if I get the numbers, but then it's $6,000 and we only get 2 and it's 4,000, you know, now hey kids, we got it. Now the board says no. Now you're in a position. That honestly, I don't want that to happen. I mean,
But I think he's saying if the board is comfortable moving forward,
right?
we
Yeah.
did the softball,
Yeah.
and say we would support it.
Right.
Yes, it was something that was board approved.
Pre-COVID, yeah.
You know, I think a month before we shut everything
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
COVID.
So it was March.
Now we're just trying to get it resurrected back. And, new
Was it
coaches,
pre-COVID?
maybe same coordinator, we don't know.
It was pre-COVID, and we actually took a whole pot of kids for
Oh, we had it ready to go. We went to training in Whitesboro. We did the whole, yeah.
Is there another training coming up that is scheduled?
I'll find out with the date on it. I'm sure there is. I can go and represent them.
Yes.
You said it's varsity level coach. Would we, much like our varsity games that we play, would we also ask sports boosters to run their concession stands
Yes.
at these games?
They could do that.
Okay, and also, Charlie, you're the checkbook guy. Do we have room in the budget to, even if we were to approve this, I'm not going to blindly say yea or nay.
Charlie's.
Not to put you on the spot or anything, Charlie,
Well, I think, looking at the presentation tonight, there is that little bit of money in the salaries if, there's some of those JV slots that don't, so this would kind of fill in one.
we
one
have to
box.
like rob
We-
Peter.
we could
pay
make
Paul
it
a
work.
little bit.
That's it. One more question?
Doug, I have a quick question.
Okay.
So this list that we have with all of the sports and the corresponding coaches, if the coach is blank, does that mean that sport is not currently
Correct.
running?
Correct.
Okay.
And they're built into the budget, so
Yes. Good. Yeah.
I think that we should go ahead. I mean, I don't think there's any question about it.
Mr. Jones, on subject here, I'm not very well versed when it comes to track. What is steeplechase? What are they talking about when they say that in here, it would have an effect, other schools have
It's
it?
a-
I don't understand.
For the novice, it's a long-distance hurdle race that jump over barriers
Okay,
that has a water pit that they go over and through, and, well, the good ones try to go over, some of them plow through it, but that's, and it's a race, it's a competition. It's 2,000 meters, and girls,
Boys and girls are different.
and boys are like 2,800 or something. It's one race, but it's a sectional event. It can be a sectional event. It can be a league event. You know, the Center State, because most schools didn't have it, they don't run it as a league event. And Tony's right. The new schools are adding it because everything gets beyond. You know, we try to make improvements and doing different things.
so like, how would that physically look here? That's what I'm trying to envision where it is.
Okay, generally, okay, you see the whole track.
Yep.
Then on one end of the track, the pit would be just offset inside the track.
Okay.
So as you're going around the track, you make a little jog, not a jog, but just a little turn, and then you're going over this barrier that has water on the other side and go through it. Then these barriers are about 8 feet long, 3.5 feet high, like a balance beam.
Okay.
They're not like a hurdle, they're a balance beam
Okay.
that they can step on to go over. And it's just more of just a longer distance race with more challenges put in the middle of it.
So we would need to modify the existing area to.
Yes, they would be digging out, putting water, and, you know, and a cover.
Laying a pan for the water.
Right.
With a drain plug, so there'd have to be drainage for someplace to
Well,
go.
yeah, I mean, you see the price to it. I mean, it's not
Well, that's
easy.
what I didn't know. I
Yeah.
don't know anything
The
about
price-
this on
that's
there,
perfect.
so what's involved, I
Price
don't
is
want
probably-
to.
And currently what happens is there's probably, and there's getting to be more, but there was probably 2 to 3 in our area that actually had steeplechase. And so if there was a sectional event happening on a Tuesday, all the schools in the district would go up and run the race on a Monday, or if the race was Wednesday, they'd run on Tuesday. We'd take buses with our 2 or 3 athletes from each school, go up, compete in the race, score the points for the sectionals, go back to your school, wherever held the sectional event, you'd go the next day. And
Can I ask a question? Is there 2 pits on the jet?
One. Yep.
So it'd be on the end where the high jump is?
Just depends where.
The high jump would
There
be
could be
outside.
there's 2 high jump pits. We can have it on either end of our field. We're lucky it could go on either one. I would say you're probably looking towards the barn to fill it with water. Then running it all the way, you have to get a tanker and bring it down and fill it up.
So where our long jump pits are?
Yes.
Yes.
My concern is, and as long as we're on this subject, inflation's been around for a few years. And when that architect put the bids together, and I'm not directing it to you.
Right.
When the architect put the bids together, they should have included inflation for both the scoreboard and the pit. It's not something that just happened today. And then to say, well, if we don't do it now, we can do it in the next project. It's 10 years.
I agree with you there, because the cost will be that much more. I don't care what you say. We're in a project now. We either do it
Or we don't.
or we don't.
And
It's not,
he should be
because if
here
it's
to the
set,
public to see
if we're gonna have all the
how it's
equipment, when they
going.
say it's not gonna cost as much down the road, I mean, the equipment's here. Next time, if it's just the pit, you gotta bring the equipment in, you gotta bring in, no, I agree that it's either now or we don't need it. And you can argue that end. It's a now or we don't need it. I don't believe in,
We're not going to tell the public we're going to do it in 10 years.
right.
I'm not
Right,
going to.
right, I
As
agree.
we talked the other night at our retreat, I'm not going down to the corner store to have someone ask me, why didn't we do it? Well, we're doing it in 10 years. That's not.
Or even worse, 3 years, when you could have had it done in.
Well, I think
I-
we have
I just wanted to understand, Doug, it wasn't an
No,
attack on
you
you,
started.
my question.
Oh, no, I don't-
I wanted
I'm
to
just-
understand better
Right.
what it was.
I think we have.
The pricing that was in the project, did that include the plumbing, or putting a hose in it and filling it.
That would be up to.
It initially had the plumbing, we took that out
Took that
so
out.
that we could put it in here. Folks, when we put this bid together, it was tight already without, inflation didn't hit steeplechase and scoreboard. It's hit everything. So it's on us now to say, here's our project. Do we want to have unit ventilators in our room, or do we want to have steeplechase in the scoreboard? Or, do we want access road redone? Or maybe that becomes an alternate if we can have the money to do that. And we take that money and put it, it's what pieces, that was my purpose of the question, was do we have the flexibility? So if the money's the money, if the 2.7 million bid for general contractors is the money, then we can still play with that money to some degree to adjust for what we feel is best meets our needs. So that's looking at everything, and that there'll be contingency for that, there'll be contingencies for, no, you gotta do this work in the buildings, you gotta do this work outside the buildings, you gotta do all of it. But we can't do all of it. Inflation has hit everything, and has,
That was my question.
And typically, and it's frustrating for me as well, is when bids are estimated, or when they estimate the cost of the project, there is built-in conservatism, but you can't control what the bidders are going to do. And they're in the same market that we're in. They're bidding for workers, they're bidding to get jobs, and then they're at the whim of the manufacturers that are producing this stuff. So as much as we might be able to estimate, or our estimators say this is what we think is a reasonable cost for this, with a conservative approach to building that, at the end of the day, we don't control what the bid is. Our hope is, in typical projects, is you bid with an estimate that seems to be high, and the bids actually come in a little bit lower. This did not work that way. The one that came close, obviously, was the general contractor bid, but everything else was above. The mechanical was way above. That was just really out of the water. So that's kind of the job we need to tackle if that's what we want. Listening to the board, it sounds like, hey, there's momentum for certain pieces of this project that are non-negotiable that we want to have. If that's true, just like building our budget, this is the pot of money we have to work with. We then have to say, all right, we're going to forego this so we can afford that. And that's what we need to do, and we can continue those discussions going forward. And I'll work with our architects and construction management on what kind of flexibilities that we may have and keep you guys informed.
Thank you, Mr.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we'll move on for public to be heard. We didn't receive any requests this evening. So we'll move on then to Board of Education Subcommittee reports.
You asked your request before. Can you just talk?
What's that?
You had to send it in before.
Yes.
Why?
We can discuss it after, if you'd like, but that's the request now. I'm sorry, Ryan, go ahead.
So, board, just a quick recap on the Board Operations Relations Subcommittee. Last time I reported out, that group had met, we talked about student memorials. I just want to come back, touch upon those, and just kind of, I think, wrap up our discussions on that. I shared with you what we discussed in those meetings as far as implications if you do, in fact, accept student memorials on school grounds, and things that might happen in the future that you may have to consider the same type of thing. I did share with you that we have had, part of that prior discussion, I did add and shared information that we have had plaques and awards associated with those plaques, specifically 2 of them with the 8th grade moving up. Kids meet a certain criteria for a plaque that's in memory of 2 students that had passed away in their middle school years. So that's something we've done. We've done scholarships in the past, and there have been a few other objects more along the lines of plants, trees, shrubs. I know of a tree and a shrub at the middle school out here by the signboard at the high school, that was in memory of somebody. So there, I know there was discussion at our last meeting that, hey, you can consider this, or at least if somebody comes and shares, this is what they're thinking, that the district, contemplates on whether or not they feel that it's suitable, doable, maintainable, those kind of things. So there has been some of that has happened before. So I just kind of want to, I guess, circle around and get the board's sense on, requests that we may have. Is there specific lines you want us to follow, or manages, I guess we said before, if there is a request. Obviously, if there's scholarships and maybe awards, a remembrance plaque, then maybe a small photo of the person or not, but just something that's in memory and it meets. We've had several of those actually, and I shared with you, and some of those are no longer, they've been gone for quite a while, or they've stopped giving the awards. And sometimes it might just be after a certain time period, who knows? If it's 10 years, 15 years, then maybe at some point in time that ceases, but at least for the foreseeable future, if somebody wanted to do something in memory, you start something and keep it going until there's maybe a suitable ending point for it, if there's an ending point at all. So we have had many of those, as well as scholarships at graduation. So I open it up to the board. Any other discussion, or I guess feedback as far as how you would like the district, I suppose, to proceed in such manners.
There was a subcommittee, I would support that
Yeah.
decision, whatever that decision was.
Well, coming out of that committee, there was really we would stay with the scholarship and the plaque, something that we've had before, but I don't know if there was if all of the information was understood that what was done before, do we continue? I know Patty had brought something up and asked that question. I knew of two things, and I think I found there was one other thing I wasn't aware of, that had been done outside of the scholarships and the plaque. But as far as other physical kind of structures, we've had multiple plaques in schools. Some of them, many of them have been for teachers. I know one in the elementary school was for a student, and I think 3 others that are in there with staff members, administrators, or teaching staff. 2 in the middle school that had to do with, in conjunction with 8th grade moving up, so they were students. All of this has been originated, to my knowledge, by groups outside of the school. Some of the ones that were a long, long time ago, I'm not sure if they were originated by the school. But the ones that I know we've had probably since the early 2000s have been, at least I know the 2 in the middle school were initiated by students. There was one that was initiated by Sauquoit Valley Friends and Neighbors, along those lines. But the school was not directly responsible for initiating that. So apparently there was a request, and the school had honored those types of things. So
I think I'll just echo what I said at the last meeting. I think that unfortunately it's not really a black and white matter, and I think that each circumstance, and we hope that they are very few, I think each one deserves a conversation, and I think that we are definitely all outspoken enough that as a board we can talk about it when, if and when it comes to that. Hopefully it doesn't, but when it does, that we are able to say, okay, these are the facts, this is the situation with this specific family or person or student, and how do we think we should move forward? Perhaps we could put it to a vote when someone comes to us and they say, I'd like to honor or memorialize this person with this, and we can, together as a board discuss it and then vote on it, and then whatever that decision is, whether it's what we were hoping for or not, then we'll stand behind that decision as one board. But I think it's just important to, look at each situation differently, because it's just not black and white. There's too much gray. So
I agree. I think if something is presented and somebody wants to do something, then it should be at least listened to and considered. And if it's something that can be utilized, if they want to do something that can be utilized.
the son two-split, where does that end? How far does that go? So how, and I don't mean to sound like a grump, but, and I get nuance too.
That's why we.
No,
listen
absolutely,
to
but
each-
then it would always, so, we make a decision as a committee, whoever the subcommittee makes a decision on that. I mean, how do you kind of, we vote, how do you vote yes or no to anybody? There should be a rule that we follow, and we keep that rule. For us, we would be voting, I mean, how do you vote no to something like
Right.
that?
So my issue with that, and I completely
Sure.
understand where you're coming from, my issue with that is that we've already granted it. So to me, it makes it look like it's a lack of integrity if we're like, well, we had this, but no. You know, so I think for me, that's my hang up.
Absolutely. I think integrity also is making, maybe we need to rethink it and stick with it. Because you're right, there's a beautiful tree. My son references the tree all the time about I forgot her name, I forgot her name because I apologize for that. And there's bricks. So absolutely, but trees and things of that nature, I just think it gets, whatever. I think that if there's a subcommittee and then those folks agree on it, that's just where I'm at. I don't mean it's other people here. I don't mean to sound,
I think we do have several avenues too by which we can use to honor those that are no longer with us. We have the bricks, we have the seats in the auditorium, so we do have a means by which we can honor those individuals. Also, I mean, even in discussions tonight, steeplechase. If we put up benches, trees, etc. on our property, and then we decide later on we wanted to use that area for something that we might want to, embellish, we can't, because we've now filled it with things, to your point, hopefully not filling it with things. But those kinds of things happen, and I feel like as a board, just to take a little bit of a step back, I think we've spent a lot of time having conversations about how do we memorialize a lost child. That's not an easy thing, but I do think that as a school board, we should really focus on being more transparent in what we do with the child while they're here with us under our remit. We have ways to memorialize them. I think we were all addressed. Maybe people were disappointed or unhappy with what they felt was the care that their child got here. I think that should be more of our focus. I think we did a lot of good things as a district. I don't know how transparent that was, but I think that should be more of our focus.
The area that I struggle with is, I understand that people have requests, but it doesn't just affect them. I don't, as a lay board person, have the knowledge or the education like our committee does and our school psychologists and our counselors to understand how some of those requests affect the other children who are coming into the district. How coming into a school and seeing memorials for other children, how it affects them at their age and their learning development and how they perceive that as well. So it's not just a request that comes from a family, but it also has an effect on the children in the district as well and those coming up through the district. So I actually got a really great education when we had that subcommittee meeting on what is age appropriate, what is acceptable. So I don't feel as a board member that I would be comfortable approving or not approving any type of request. I feel that that's definitely the guidelines we got from our subcommittee were appropriate.
I think children see memorials day in and day out, driving down the Parkway, going to battlefields. I mean, it's an honor. And I think each request, hopefully there'll be very few, should be listened to.
I think we've learned an awful lot from this occurrence, and I think it's educated each and every one of us. And I think, Ron, you've heard everyone's point of view, and whoever is selected as the new superintendent, I'm sure we will carry that information on to that individual. And when the next unfortunate experience occurs, I think we'll handle it well. I'm confident we will. And I think somebody mentioned it's not always black and white. But being aware of the situation, the circumstances, the family. When I read the report from the committee, the one thing that came to my mind is, how about the family that doesn't know that they are able to do something for their child? Or do we gonna reach out to them and say, oh, by the way, I mean, there's a lot of discretion there, so that was the one thing that came to me. How would you reach out to family? Oh, by the way, would you like to plant a tree on the property? Would you like to put a brick in? I don't know how you approach that. But
That was very clear in our discussions that we wouldn't.
okay.
That wouldn't, but if the request came
Came
our
to
way.
you, the superintendent will be the focal person, the committee, and I think for some time now, you know the concerns of this board. So maybe someday in the future, we may have another discussion with a new board, but I think you know how we feel now.
So I'm just kind of the recap
Say it,
is,
give him
is,
answer.
yes, I mean, what is, I do have a couple points of view about hearing out the request, and if there was something we felt was feasible and appropriate, we could entertain it, but it leaves a lot of gray. I've also heard we need to maybe be more black and white. The things that we have done or that have been pretty prominent are certainly the award types of plaques, the scholarships. We do have the Brook Avenue for the walkway in the stadium, certainly the placard for behind the seats in the auditorium, or as another option to recognize that person. And these requests might come from students too at some point in time. And are we going to look at that the same way as we look if the request comes from a family or some other outside entity? It may not always be just the family that it comes from. So all I've done is repeat everything you guys have shared.
So are you like, is this a vote?
He wants it black. You want it black and white.
Well, it's, the consensus seems, is what I've heard at least consistently, is what the committee had recommended is, A, the district does not initiate, and that we should certainly give strong consideration to stay away from some type of, physical structure, albeit a plant, be it some other structure other than maybe what we've had, where we've had either plaques on a wall or in facing a middle school in a display case. I think we have one in the display case for a music award here at the high school for somebody to actually just after they graduate. But so those are the, is that what I'm hearing? Is that we stick with those mainstays that we have? We weren't. We do have a few of those. Other things, plants. That I can speak. I don't know of any other type of monument or other sorts that I'm aware of.
I think that the thing that I just keep thinking to myself is, for me, it feels wrong to say no after we've already said yes. Not me personally, obviously, but it just feels wrong to me to say no if we already have stuff up.
And I think this situation, if you want to revisit it after this situation, then we revisit it and put a plan in, but this situation has dragged on.
But now hold on,
Where do you want?
because you're saying we can do that, but after this time we won't.
No, I'm saying that this
Right?
situation already looks really,
Well, that's subjective. That, I understand how things look.
and that's mine.
Absolutely, right.
That's what I'm saying.
Absolutely, I'm just saying, there's, it's not,
I'm
it's
saying
complicated.
this, well,
But we can't
I'm
say,
saying the optics of this.
but we can't say, we won't do it again after this one time. Like this one time, it's all good, and this is,
No, I said we could revisit it. I didn't say that we won't do it again. I said we could revisit it. I think this situation needs to be taken care of.
But I think that there's a big difference between the optics and actuality. Like, just the way, because something looks a certain way doesn't mean that it is that way. Because it's perception, it's all perception. Like it can't be emotional. One of the best things I've heard, one of the best things that I heard out of that committee was that unfortunately, grief is very emotional, but in making a decision about memorials, you have to take the emotion out of it. That is one of the things that resonated the most with me, because it's true. Grief is all-consuming emotion, but when we're making this decision, everyone wants to do the right thing. That is why Ron is sitting here going, help me out, guys, because he's compassionate and he's human, and we all are, and we all want to make the right decision. And sometimes this is why it's taken so long to make a decision. We're all human, we all have compassion, we all care, we all want to do the right thing. Sometimes the right thing is the harder thing to do because it doesn't feel right, even though it's right. And to back ourselves into a corner and say, if we review something every single time, the next time when it's something that could be far greater and far more involved, we are now putting ourselves in a position to face something much worse and make it much more difficult on ourselves ahead of time.
I don't think it's a difficult decision. I don't think that there's any grief involved. I think that it, on our part, I mean, though there may be sadness, I just don't agree. I just don't agree.
So let me, I guess, try to simplify it. I would say is the prevailing feeling is to stick what we have consistently done. We don't, I think to Patty's question is, yes, we've done these in the past, and what was the process to allow that? We don't know, we haven't been through this. For this first time, I've been going through this first time, and you guys are going through this. So we can't answer for that. What we will answer to is if we make decisions and it does come up again, I think, everybody's point is, then how do you say no to that if you said to this? So, is the prevailing, I guess, point the stick with the plaques, the scholarships, and the other things that are available to people behind the auditorium seats and the brick walkway? Is that, I guess, raise your hand if you say that.
I say yes
That's
to
the
that.
prevailing thought. And I guess the other thought would be is then open it up to discretion each time that arises.
I think
Okay,
so.
I think so.
I think so.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. Not an easy topic to talk about, but thank you for your thoughts and discussion. That's it for subcommittee reports.
Next, we'll move on to superintendent's report.
Just announcing Staff Development Day will be next Friday, the 17th. Our staff will be engaged in many activities, both on and off campus. BOCES does provide a lot of professional learning opportunities, especially during the March session, that gives our teachers opportunities to engage with teachers from other districts too. So we have a number of our staff going out to various BOCES offerings, as well as having our own curriculum and instruction type initiatives going on in-house. So that'll be a day off for students. So your kids will be home on that Friday. Plan accordingly, and then teachers will certainly be in for a full day. The next thing, board petitions. They are due Monday, April 17th by 5 p.m. to the board clerk, Mrs. Goodman, and that's in the upper office of the elementary school. So anyone who's interested may stop in the superintendent's office, again, upper end of the elementary school, to pick up a packet for board petitions. Board member for the Sauquoit Valley, we are, I guess I'll just highlight it here, but one of the voting items is to approve the nomination of Tony Nicotera to represent the Sauquoit Valley Central School District on the BOCES board. Tony took over for John Griffin, who did it for many years for us, and did a wonderful job, and Tony has filled in seamlessly after John in doing so. He's just finishing his first 3-year term and is looking to do it again, and he certainly has my full support, and hopefully your support too when it comes to voting here. And then just last thing quickly, school mascot game update. We did close down the surveys to the community, to the students. I am compiling, there's a lot of different offerings out there, so it's kind of neat to look at some. Some we won't be able to entertain. But for the most part, I think there were a lot of neat ideas, and even some that didn't have a lot of, even one or two, but they were just, at least I feel, they were some neat thoughts. So what I'll do now is kind of get that information compiled. I did reach out if there was any board. I know Lynn and Mike said they were interested to be a part of a committee to look at that. So I will certainly get some school staff, administration, students, and some community involved with kind of taking that list and honing it down to what we would then like to put out to a vote. And just a thought here as far as a vote, we had the ability with the school newsletter to notify the entire community of the need for the change and the opportunity to offer a suggestion. We won't have that until May when we put out the budget newsletter. So thoughts, I mean, I certainly have Parent Square, but that only hits people who have kids that are in school. If the board's thoughts as far as, I'm just trying to think outside the box as far as notifying community, maybe with a postcard, maybe with a site that they could come in and maybe do a paper ballot, old-fashioned way, but a way to say, hey, we want to include you. If you're interested, you can come to a site or sites, and we'll have it staffed to take on that vote. Would you like me to put something, when we're ready to go that route, I guess, are you comfortable with the, it costs a little money to put a mailing out for a postcard, but...
have a text option or something that we can publish?
Well, we could, I'm sure the sites do some type of electronic option there, just help somebody through it. I don't know, I guess I'll have to work out the logistics, whether it would be just paper or if there's a way that somebody could vote and only do it once electronically and not vote multiple times electronically.
Well, and then
That's what we have
the
to do.
notification, like a phone or like a call, and
Oh.
notify them of the
Office,
versus paying postage since it's gone.
Right. That's the only thing, and I'd rather not wait till the end of April when the budget newsletter goes out. This is a process I want to continue to move forward and get some conclusion here before the end of the school year. And I think we have the time frame to do that, but waiting that much longer may not be. I'll try to brainstorm some options, or if you guys have some other thoughts to share with us.
I wanted to call you today, and I apologize because I just got carried away. At BOCES last night, as part of the executive committee, we did a roundtable at the end. And of course, this is a pressing issue of every district. And surprisingly, 2 districts came forward in their presentation and said that they discussed their name change with the United Nations and received a consensus support that they didn't have to change their name. What they did is, one school had to drop their sword, their spear. That was Whitesboro. Now, I'm not saying it's, but it was presented by a board member. It was presented as if Mr. Humbreder was okay because they kept their warrior if they took the spear out of their logo and off the table. And the other district didn't have a name. They just left it as school district Great Neck, period, like that. But the 2 warriors, he gave a verbal okay to, and I should have called you and gave you that information today. We would have followed it up.
Give a verbal okay, is that going to be,
I don't know. I don't know, but I think Ron can follow that up.
When you read the state ads, no. So
Michael Head was from Whitesboro, you know that.
I'll try to investigate that.
Yeah. But that was good.
That's a different situation. That's a different situation than what we're in.
But it wasn't just a, no, you can't do it. It was, we
that's where I think I know that's a lot of people's thinking, and I do believe that's well, I'll call it a gray area. The state may say it's not a gray area. We may have people say, no, it's not a gray area. We believe black and white is this way. They believe black and white this way. I don't know. I don't have any answer. And I'm not getting any
Say they
answer.
want the mascot.
Yeah.
If it's the dragons, you're not going to have a fight.
Well, it won't be.
It's going to be the spiders, you're not going to have a fight. But let's see
Or-
see what the vote is.
Or can we work something, if something does entail a feather, can we work something in the logo that still has it, that might not?
That's it, yeah.
Right,
that's the same
so,
thing.
work to be done, and it will start at least with the nickname, and then the next,
Sounds good.
bridge across will be the logo. So, okay, that's all I have for my report.
We don't have anything under old business.
I do have a question about,
Sure.
I believe it to be old business, but as I age, my memory is not so great. Did we discuss the fitness center previously and the community's ability to use said fitness center since, post-COVID?
Okay.
Well, like I said,
And, no, we can certainly, I think the process was community, if they came, we kind of treated it like what we did prior to COVID. And it really, it's open, but, we haven't had, we have staff that I know are using it, and there's certain protocols for that. But what we were doing with community was more or less treating it like a facility use. At one time, we were staffing it to a certain level of time, but if there was a group of people that said, hey, I have a group of us that come in and we'd like to work out together, and we grant them like we would, hey, I'm bringing a group in for basketball, I want to use the gym on Thursday nights. What gym do you have available for us? And doing that in a group, and then one person would be kind of, or two people kind of responsible for that group, and they would be given access to be able to get into the fitness center and do it that way. So that's what we were doing, and we can certainly resort back to that at this point in time. There's no reason why we can't. So if people are interested, they can certainly reach out.
Can we charge for that?
We don't. And there were certain time restraints too, that like right after school, like it was closed until like 5 or 5:30. So there was, there were hours that it was available. So it may not always be most conducive, but we did allow certain hours, I think, first thing in the morning and then in the evening.
We'll move on to new business. I'll read 8.1 to 8.10 as a consent agenda. If anyone has any questions or comments or would like anything told for further discussion, please let me know. 8.1 is permanent appointment of teacher aide. 8.2 is appointment of substitute teacher aide. 8.3, Town of Paris agreement. 8.4, adopt 2023-2024 school calendar. 8.5, appointment of extracurricular advisor. 8.6, resolution authorizing participation in Oswego County BOCES Cooperative Purchasing Program. 8.7, appointment of election coordinator and inspector. 8.8, appointment of election officials. 8.9, annual meeting and budget vote. 8.10, appointment of Board of Education representative to the BOCES Cooperative Board. 8.11, approval of minutes of the February 14th, 2023 meeting. 8.12, authorizing payment of bills approved by the claims auditor. 8.13, Committee on Special Education and Committee on Preschool Special Education recommendations. 8.14, additional athletic appointment 2022-2023. 8.15, acceptance of general construction bid capital project. 8.16, acceptance of plumbing bid capital project. 8.17, acceptance of electrical bid capital project. 8.18, acceptance of artificial turf field system bid, capital project. 8.19, acceptance of tennis court scope bid, capital project. And 8.20, acceptance of track cleaning recoding bid, capital project. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or would like anything pulled for further discussion? Oh, okay, I got a lot of comments on that. So 8.7, okay. Anything else? I just quickly wanted to recognize 8.7 and 8.8 for our election coordinators and inspectors and officials. I just want to thank them because I know that some of these people come back every year to help out with that, and I just think it's a great service to us, and I want to just thank them for their time to do that. So if we're good then, I will need a motion to approve 8.1 to 8.20 with the exception of 8.10. Mike? Okay, so moved. Second? Lynn? Yes. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? So we'll move on to, I need a motion to open discussion on 8.10. Mike, I'll need a second, please. Ron? Okay, Mike, go ahead.
I appreciate you doing this a lot, because I know that, I don't know when I would ever find time to do that. And I know that I was trying to be your designee, and I've not really done very well with that. So I'm gonna try to get better at that.
You're doing
So
fine.
I appreciate your time doing it.
Let me just clarify, please. There is no backup designee for this. That's for School
Well,
Boards
it-
Institute.
Okay, that's what I meant.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I'm working.
So, right,
That's
but,
a hard one.
but you can still work on it.
I'm listening, I'm working on a lot of stuff.
So
So thanks for your patience.
I wanted to say, first of all, Tony, thank you for doing this. You're very actively involved and you do a great job, and I think you represent the Sauquoit Valley School District so well. So I appreciate all of the extra time that you do put in for this. So I'm very happy. It's more than a pleasure to have you do this again for another 3 years. So thank you very much. All right.
I do want to say we do appreciate everything. No one better than you.
You're the Board of Education guy.
Next item.
Yes.
All of us. You get a box of all of us.
I'm going to, I'm going to abstain from 8.1.
All right, does any other further discussion on 8.10? We'll vote. All those in favor to approve 8.10? Aye. Any opposed? No? Tony is an abstention. All right. Next, we will move on to miscellaneous topics. I just quickly wanted to thank all of the board. We had our retreat, and I thought it was a great exercise. I thought it was a great night. I thought for our law firm did a great job, and the workshop that we had with the Gold Building, I thought that was really great. I hope it's something that we continue to do. I think it was just a great night. So thank you all for coming and giving us extra time. I thought it really turned out to be a good evening. So thank you.
I have a miscellaneous topic also. Any talk, what do you think of the school carnival coming back? How long has it been since we've had a school carnival?
Good question. I don't know.
You know, who specifically ran it, or who specific group?
It was I believe it was the teachers union that spearheaded that. So, yeah, they're the ones that got the volunteers, put it all together. Yeah.
For some reason, I thought we had one, Patty, when Nick and Benny were in elementary school, I think was the last time.
I don't
It was even pre-COVID.
Carnival?
It wasn't as casually as COVID.
I remember it was yeah, do you remember? Yeah, it was in the high school, and it was like in the gymnasium and in the cafeteria, I do remember it was.
Yeah, I remember, but I don't know.
They gave each other
I don't know if it was like a Academy Night thing or how it was.
Actually, it was Johnny would have been really young. I think it's one, I only speaking from my perspective, I think it's one of those events that ran its course. It became more and more difficult to get volunteers to help and get all the stuff that it was, there would be one or two people that kind of spearheaded it, and then you relied on everybody else to help out. The day of, quite an undertaking, I will say. I had never been a part of anything like that. Two other schools I've been a part of. So I think they have other means of supporting scholarships, you know, how they raise money for scholarships. I know that was one of their main sources.
Did they replace the carnival with the chicken barbecue for a few years?
Not sure what.
Right.
We still do an election night fundraiser. It's not going to be charter this time around. I'm sorry, charter. I'm sorry. There will be something different this time. We do the Easter Bunny. I should rephrase that. It's the Happy Hoppy Bunny Extravaganza, which is an event that we'll do the last Saturday in April. That's what we primarily use to raise the money for senior scholarships. And Mr. Wheelock is right. It was a wonderful event that many people enjoyed. It kind of ran its course. There were a couple of dedicated elementary teachers who did try to bring that back. Cost of things, getting volunteers, getting people together. It eventually became a money loser and then just a challenge to put together. And I know the two people who were spearheading it, they're very heavily involved in the PTO and they do all kinds of wonderful things. Like I'm excited to see that info event that they have coming up in a few weeks as well. So we don't have that one big event happening, but we have all these wonderful little events happening spread throughout the year instead. So that's kind of what happened.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
I have one quick thing while we're on the topic of events. The father-daughter dance. Is the school putting that on this year?
That's a PTO event. School doesn't run that, so that would be through PTO.
So is the PTO putting it on?
I don't.
They used to do the father daughter.
They do it right
dance,
the
then
day.
Father-son night is like
Yeah,
sports.
yeah.
night.
It's like the day after the, I was just wondering about that. I think somebody could ask about it.
That's right, because they used to leave the prom stuff set up
Yeah.
and they would have it in there. From what I understand.
We played dodgeball and jump through.
Yeah, that's what.
The bouncy house.
Yeah.
I think I got kicked.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Ron, go ahead.
School mascot, I just thought, now, we've got votes in, obviously, you're gonna tally them at this point?
So there's suggestions?
Yes.
So I think what we'll do is take the,
Top 5?
well, I think I'll share where we got a number of responses, and then maybe we pare it down from there.
And then people vote again.
And then people would actually vote on what they would like. So there's now their choices. We just took suggestions.
Yeah.
Now we're going to narrow down the choices to be voted upon.
And then the top, then who makes the final decision on what the mascot is? Are we,
The vote.
we vote, the top vote getter?
Yes. I'll defer to the committee, but I would assume that's what we would do.
That's what I thought, but
Yeah.
I wasn't sure on that.
Yeah.
That was anybody's,
Yeah.
the top 3, and then someone else is not the group.
Right, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right, Ron, I just want to double check if the name that's chosen is maybe not like, you know, it shouldn't be chosen. Do we kind of do a review of it?
I think the committee needs to review whether that should go forward for a vote or not.
Yeah.
We will watch
Absolutely.
that before.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that just the name or is this going along with the logo?
So it would be the name, and then depending on the name, we'll decide, we'll
See if it
see
ties
what
into
the
something.
logo, what are these considerations. I guess we'll have to see what the nickname is first, and then determine a logo from there.
Any other miscellaneous topics? No? Okay. All right. So, we do have executive session this evening.
Yes.
So, yeah,
Legal matter.
for legal matter. All right, so I'll need a motion to go into executive session at 8:39 for a legal matter. Patty? Second is